Parshas Mishpatim, and we were talking about the different questions on Ve'ela Mishpatim Chertasim Lefneim. What's the idea that specifically now we're talking about Mishpatim, the logical mitzvahs, and why does he start off with Eved Ivri, and what's the Sikna Eved Ivri in the singular, and the plural Lefneim before them, etc. So essentially, and we spoke about many aspects of this. We said that there has to be mishpatim in a way that becomes understood in our mind. That there's the level of the Torah, the way it's Natzilus, and then that's called Torah's Hashem. And then there's Torah Soy, that we need to bring the Torah down into our mind and our understanding. But at the very same time that we understand it, it has to be in a way that we are a servant, we are an Eved. And that is with the idea of Hisikna. Hisikna Kinyan, we spoke, the level of acquisition is the level of Atzilus. Moshe Rabbeinu brings the level of Atzilus, as we'll soon explain more about Moshe Rabbeinu, into the Torah down here. And this is enabled by the neshama because the neshama's root originally is Natzilus, therefore it's able to connect with the Torah the way it's Torah's called Natzilus should come down here. That's also what the Yerushalmi says, that Tosim is from the word Sima, a treasure, that you place the treasure. In other words, the treasures of the Torah, the inner part of the Torah, helps reveal the inner part of the neshama, so that even when he is learning Torah with his own mind and his own understanding, he can still have the level, and he feels that the Torah transcends his mind. It's really the Torah of Atzilus, the level of Kinyan Hisikna Avadim. And now the Rebbe is going to elaborate all along that concept. Another concept he brought is that the level of Torah coming down from being Hashem's Torah to our Torah really reveals an aspect of Hashem that knows no boundaries. So when the Torah of Hashem comes down to become our Torah in our mind, that expresses and connects with Hashem's infinite power in the Torah. So we're holding Oisei. So the simple meaning of when it says that you will place the Mishpatim before them. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu, he should place these laws and rules before the Yid. This is also understood concerning when you will acquire. Like we said earlier in Ais Gimel, and it says you will acquire in the singular instead of they will acquire. So we're not talking about Klal Yisrael. We're talking about Shezekoi al Moshe. It's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu will acquire the servant. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu will bring the Yid that's learning Torah, even though he's learning Torah down here with his mind and his intellect. He should be aware and feel and recognize that it's the Torah of Hashem, the Torah of Atzilus. The idea behind this is the Isa B'Zoyar, Protam and Zoyar are a very interesting difference between the way Moshe Rabbeinu's name is recorded in Torah to other tzaddikim. That when Hashem called other tzaddikim, so it says, "V'kullu aser d'shma ad ketrei zimna," in every place where the name of a tzaddik is mentioned twice. For example, sometimes we find that Hashem called Abraham twice. It says Abraham, Abraham, and he said he named him. So pasik time of begavai. There is a cantillation. There is a trough. There's one of the time hamikra. It looks just like a line that separates between the two names. Going Avram, Avram. Puts Moshe, Moshe. When Hashem called Moshe twice, the loy pasik time of begavai. Over there is no separation between the two names of Moshe. How come? Why is that so? And Chassidus explained Abraham, Abraham through his neshama descending down below. Nasa Bashinoi, the Gabi Sharsha Shabbat, there became a change in the neshama of Abraham Avinu in comparison to the way its root was when he was in the world of Atzilus. That's what the line indicates between one Avram and the second Avram, meaning there's Avram the way he's in Atzilus, and Avram the way he's down here. And there's a separation, a line in between. Enkim of Moshe as opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu Gambi Yoshelamata, also while Moshe Rabbeinu was down here below. Hey, Begili Mekoidik Moshe Batzilus, shown in a revealed way, is sourced the way it's in Atzilus, until there's no separation between them. Loi Pasik Taima, there's no separation of the trop between them, meaning that there's no line over there indicating no division, no separation. Moshe down here is the exact Moshe of Atzilus. What's the reason for it? Why did Moshe have this unique capability of being down here? The way he was down here below. He was the way he's not Atzilus, with the root of the neshama of Moshe is from the level of literally the circles, which means the transcendent levels, the makifim, that's higher than the chain order of descent. The when we're dealing with that which is beyond the whole chain order of the different spheres and the different worlds, Atzilus v'asiyah b'shava, that both the world of Atzilus and our world down here is the same. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu, his source is from the level that transcends Atzilus. Therefore, by him, the fact that there's a level of him in Atzilus and a level of him in this world, that's not contradictory. They can be joined together. So because Moshe Rabbeinu has no contradiction and division and separation the way he's in Atzilus versus the way he's in this world, that's why Moshe is the one that does that in the person down here learning Torah. That's why to Moshe was said that you will place before them when you will be koinem kiachib, or the base of darg is this joining of both levels. The two levels in Torah, the way it's enclosed in the human intellect. Like we said, what does it mean to place it before them? Not that they should just review it by rote, not that they just say over the halachas again and again, review the mishnayos by heart without understanding the reasons. But he should actually explain them. The Rav and Moshe Rabbeinu has the job of explaining the Torah to the student. And together with that, even though it's explained and it's enclosed in the human intellect, and also the way the Torah is not Atzilus, your Torah, like we said, that in benching it says, Torah is talking about your Torah. Your Torah is the way it's joined with you in Atzilus. You taught us that's in Bria. So in other words, the level of Atzilus is Kinyan. So how did we have the joining of Torah the way it's in human intellect and the Torah the way it's not Atzilus? So like I mentioned before, that we spoke about last week, you need to have a level that's higher than both, a level that's higher than Atzilus and higher than this world. Moshe Rabbeinu incorporated both of those because he was from higher this world as well, higher than Seder Ishtalshus, higher than Atzilus. Why the Agilui the L'mayla Mishtalshus Shinim Shvaydei Moshe, through the revelation that's beyond the chain order of descent that comes on through Moshe. Moshe's Bar Leil Siv Gimel, like also we learned last week, Shachibur the Tiras Ishala Adam and Torah Savai, the joining of his Torah, the human being's Torah, the way a human being understands Torah, with the fact that it's Hashem's Torah. How can that take place? Needs to have the Ein Sof. Why the Gilui Ein Sof? It's through the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem that's beyond the Torah of Avaya, beyond the human intellect, and therefore the Ein Sof has no boundaries, and it can join them both together. Oizbam. This explanation in Bechisikna, that's referring to what it says that you will place it, not like in the simple meaning of the pasuk, that the kisikna is going on the lifnei hem, and then there's a question about plural, singular, second person, third person. No, but the kisikna is going on you who was placing it. Moshe Rabbeinu was placing it. We can also connect it with a simple meaning. And when it says you will acquire, it's referring to what it says afterwards, kisikna eved, that you will acquire a servant. And we asked in the beginning of the Maamar, why is the first idea, why does he begin with the dinim of Eved Ivri? When he wants to talk about mishpatim, the rational laws, the civil laws, why does he begin with the law of Eved Ivri? So he says, because it's teaching us a lesson about how we are supposed to learn Torah. When a person's Torah study is in a way of the level of kinyan, that he's aware and he feels that the Torah that he studies is the Torah of Hashem. Then his Torah study is in a total state of bit. Dugmas bittul ha'eved la'adin. We mentioned this also earlier in the mind. Similar to the bittul, to the nullification, to the sublimation of a servant to his master. Now, the question is, Torah study is not about bit. Mitzvahs, we're soon going to mention, is a command. Command you do because you are commanded. Torah study is about my brain. It says, though the idea of study. Not the person should nullify his mind to the Torah. Just the opposite. He should understand the Torah in his own mind. Such an approach that I need to understand. So it's about my being. It's my existence. How much more how much more so when the Torah study becomes his own, he possesses it, like we mentioned earlier, still in all. Through the fact that it's felt by him that the Torah also after it descends down there below and became enclosed in humanity. He still is aware of the fact that he Torah Savai, that's the Torah of Hashem, the wisdom of Hashem, that's beyond the intellect of the creations. Skip the brackets, 4 lines. That Shumavin HaTorah Vasechel Shaloi Ein Soiser L'Inyan Habitul. With that he understands the Torah with his intellect is not contradictory to the idea of bittul. The fact that he understands the Torah with his intellect to such a degree that we say it becomes his Torah. It's not a result of his being. It's not that the person feels it's my accomplishment, but rather it's really impossible for a person to understand Hashem's intellect. Because Hashem is omnipotent, Hashem can do anything. In other words, really a person should not be able to incorporate the intellect of Hashem in his mind and make it part of his mind. The only reason he's able to do that is because of Hashem's infinite power that can join the two. So therefore, I do not take credit and I do not become full of myself and full of my ego when I understand Torah, because it's not really my accomplishment. The fact that I can understand something that transcends my mind is no thanks to me. It's because Hashem's infinite capability to be able to join his Torah with my mind. So therefore, it doesn't contradict my being an Eved, my being a servant, my being bottled to Hashem. So now the Rebbe is based on this going to say that there is also this idea is also expressed in an expression that the Chazal use concerning Torah. Al-Piza, you have in Lashon Chazal, according to this was to be understood, a certain expression that the Chazal use, Ula Shal Torah, the yoke of Torah. Now again, yoke is like you take an animal and you yoke it to connect it to a certain thing, whether it's a plow, whether it's a wagon, and they need to do what they need to do. So the question is, why would one apply to Torah the term yoke? Buddha seemingly even shemitzvahs Talmud Torah he. Since the mitzvah of Torah study is loisha adam yevatla sichlel Torah, it's not the person should nullify his mind and sublimate his mind to the Torah. El adrab, just the opposite. He should understand the Torah in his own intellect. Skip the brackets to the next line. So Mao Inyan Ula Shal Torah, what's the idea of the yoke of Torah? The oil in Abitol. Oil is the idea of sublimation. Beer Bezel Canal explanation is just like we said before. Idea through the knowledge and the feeling. Torah Savai. That the Torah is Hashem, it's Hashem's Torah. Skip the brackets again, 2 lines down. Also, the fact that he understands the Torah in his mind, the ula shel Torah, it's the yoke of Torah, meaning Torah the Torah is his master, and the Yid is nullified to the Torah like a servant that the yoke of his master is upon him. The fact that the Torah was given over to the person's domain and possession, skip the parentheses, that's because that's the will of the master, the one that gave the Torah. So it's again, no thanks to the person studying, it's all because Hashem wanted me to understand this. Connect is what Chazal say. Why does the parsha begin with the letter Vav? And these are the mishpatim. And these, it adds to the early ones. Just like the early ones, meaning what says in Parshas Yisro, the Aser Sadibris came on Har Sinai, so too these are from Har Sinai. Power to join the 2 extremes, the 2 opposites. That's to be found in these mitzvahs that are mishpatim. On the one hand, let's continue. Shehem muvanim b'seichel, they are understood intellectually. While limud shalahem tzarich liyis ba'if nasher tasim lefneim tamam yashiv talmudam, and the way you're studying it has to be in such a manner that you will place it before them, meaning you have to explain to them the reason that causes their study to become settled, not just have them review the topics and the halachas by rote, but they need to understand the reasoning behind it, like we learned last week. When he understands the reasons, so then the Torah becomes the Torah of the person that's studying it, but he owns it. Along with understanding it and owning the Torah. The study has to be in a way that you're acquiring it. He has to feel that's Hashem's Torah. Your Torah of Atzilus Kinyan, the level of Atzilus, which is Kinyan. B'Yisedem is even more so. From the Evet Ulishal Torah, that the study has to be in a manner of a servant, the yoke of the Torah. So it says, even those Nitin Misinai, they were given on Har Sinai. Because Sinai is also a combination of these 2 opposites. How so? Also in Sinai is the joining of these 2 opposites. Mitzius ubitul. There's the existence, just like with my mind, I'm existing, and then I have to nullify myself. The Torah, let's explain what the Torah does. The fact that the Torah was given on Har Sinai, lower than the lowest of all the mountains, and so either you want to give it on a mountain, give it on a tall mountain. If you don't want to give it on a tall mountain, give it on a plain, give it on a flat ground. So why do we have both? It's a mountain that's lower than all the mountains. Because in Har Sinai there's both opposites. Har, a mountain shows on height, and the fact that it's lower shows on bittul, because the whole idea of the person that's studying Torah has to be a combination of both these things. The level of the bittul that he has recognizing that it's Torah's God, it's your Torah, it's the Torah of Atzilus, Torah Savaya, and at the same time, my existence is here because I must understand it. I can't just say, be a yes man and say, well, the Torah said it for sure, that's the way it is. So now the Rebbe is going to express these 2 points, not just in Torah study, but also in mitzvahs. Chazal said, the greatness of Torah study is that brings to action. Shloimer, we could say, through the joining of both opposites, mitzias of bittul, both the existence and the sublimation of Torah that's in Torah study. In a similar vein, you have the joining of these 2 opposites in the mitzvahs. Now, if you remember, I said that mitzvahs is primarily about being a servant, whereas Torah is primarily about understanding. So, therefore, the chiddush in mitzvahs that Rebbe is going to say is not in the servitude part. The chiddush in mitzvahs is that it has to become part of me. And the chiddush in Torah is, even though I understand it, it has to be in a way of bit. Let's see it inside. El Shabalim Torah, 3rd line in Ches. Study of Torah, HaChiddush HaBittul, the novelty, the uniqueness is the bit. Though Torah study involves a person's understanding and comprehension, which means that their involvement is with their own existence. Mikol Malkin Sarkli is Halimud a bit, will still in all the Torah study has to be in a state of sublimation and nullification, despite the fact that he's bringing his mind and his intellect. And the fulfillment of mitzvahs, the novelty over here, is the person's own existence and what he brings to it. Though the fulfillment of mitzvahs has to be because Hashem's command, like it's understood from the fact that the word mitzvahs is the word command, but in a way how a servant serves. And that's Perek Mamalef and Tanya, the whole point, to do the mitzvahs because I'm commanded by the king. The way how he nullifies himself. It's not supposed to be in a way that the bittul completely negates his existence. He becomes bittul. I knew the fact that he's the servant of the Eibushter. It's not because he is coerced to be Hashem's servant. He wants to be Hashem's servant, so he's coming to it on his own. He has vitality, he has energy in it, he has delight in it, not like when someone is coerced to do something. But if someone does it on their own, so then there's a much more vitality and excitement. And again, this mingling of bittul and mitzias together, that this is his mitzias. There was once a story about, there was a chassid in Petersburg that was fabrengen at night, and they were slightly inebriated after the fabrengen, and he was going to his place of residence, and there was a lot of illegal people, Yidden, living in Petersburg, because only people with documentation were allowed to live in Petersburg. And this chassid was already a little bit under the influence, so he didn't pay attention, and a cop stops him. A police officer stops him and says, "Who goes there?" So he says, "Bittul diot," which means Bittul is going. After the fabrengen, his whole feeling was, his whole image of himself was that he's not a separate entity. His whole metzias, his whole being is a being of Bittul. Now, we can explain further about this idea. It starts off with Torah study. We just now said it's both Torah and mitzvahs. But mitzvahs, you need to ensure that you have the metzias of the person in addition to their bittul. And in Torah, you have to make sure that you have the bittul in addition to their metzias. So he says, Of the two, he could have started with the idea of mitzvahs. Why did he start with the mishpatim, with what he's teaching? Shloimer, we could say, the time of Malzeh Shas Cholos, Hatzivuim, the Parsh Mishpatim, or Pasuk Ve'ela Mishpatim, Shetasim of name, Shemedaber B'limit HaTorah, Kedrosh Chazal, amongst the reasons on the fact at the beginning of the commandments of Parsh Mishpatim is the Pasuk, and these are the Mishpatim that you will place before them. That it speaks about the Torah study, like Chazal derived, that you have to teach the Torah in a way that you give it to them understood, not just by rote. Uvalel Siv Gimel, that was brought down in the chapter 3. Not like the majority of commands in the Torah, that it begins, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, Tzav is Bnei Yisrael, command the Bnei Yisrael. It doesn't say the idea of study. All it says is, tell them to do this and this. So here, all of a sudden, we're talking about Torah study, instead of just going to the mitzvah itself, what Hashem wants us to do. The fact that the beginning of the commands of Parsh Mishpatim is in the laws of a servant. Ram is at hints Shakim Kalam Mitzvah Sarach Lis B'derech Avodas Evet Kanal Sit Beis. Hints that the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs has to be in a way of like a servant servant. Since also the bittul of the acceptance of the yoke, the service of a servant, has to be with vitality and with delight, like we said before, with enjoyment, with passion, with excitement. That's why he begins with Torah study, not like with other parshas that just go direct to the mitzvah. Tzav is Bnei Yisrael, command the Bnei Yisrael, daven Bnei Yisrael. Why? The mataynu v'achayis shebelimud Torah, from the delight and the passion and the enjoyment and the excitement that a person has in Torah study, because then they're using their mind, so it's exciting, it's invigorating, and so on. So from that, there's a trickle-down effect or an overflow effect. Also in the mitzvahs, nimshach me'ena tainug v'achayis, the Torah comes down, similar to the delight and the passion and excitement of Torah, gam ba'avodah the Kabbalas oil, also in the avodah of Kabbalas oil, of accepting the yoke of heaven. Now, earlier in the Maamar, we had also asked the question, why, if he wants to explain the importance of having bittul in Torah study, so why does he bring from an Eved Ivri, from a Hebrew maidservant, from a Hebrew servant? Seemingly, it should have brought from an Eved Kanani. An Eved Kanani is even more, a stronger level of a servant. He's even more subjugated to his master with different, well, for the amount of time that he serves forever, and also in the manner how the master may treat a Hebrew servant, this a lesser degree, lesser severity of servitude than to a non-Jewish servant. So how come do we bring this lesson about bittul from the Hebrew servant instead of the non-Jewish servant? Pisa Yuvan, according to be understood. Scholars are parsha, but didn't have the fact the beginning of the parsha is in the laws of a Hebrew servant. Though the main idea of servitude is in a non-Jewish servant, like we mentioned before in Ice Base, Shlem is the Inyan Avdus Kabbalas oil, because the perfection of the idea of servitude, ultimate servitude is that the bittul of the servitude should be permeated with delight and vitality and energy. It should be an invigorated bittul. This is to be found specifically according to the way Chassidus explains what a Hebrew servant is about. Be understood according to what Alter Rebbe writes in a Maamar title, when a man will sell his daughter for a maidservant, skip the brackets. Next line, the Gimel Mine Ha'avodim Parshas Mishpatim, 3 types of servants. That's in Parshas Mishpatim. Eved Kanani, a non-Jewish servant. Eved Ivri, a Jewish servant. Ba'ama Ivriya, and a Jewish maidservant. Gimel Madreges Ba'avodas Havaya. These are three levels of the Hashem service. Evet Knani Hu, Sha'arotzen V'ataynik Shaloim B'prikas Oil. A non-Jewish servant. Where is his delight and enjoyment? Where is his will? His will and enjoyment are not in being bought. Maamar Chazal say, after a servant feels better when he's free. His nachas ruach, his delight, his enjoyment is in being without any type of yoke. The only reason why this type of person serves Hashem, the person that's on the level of David Knani, is only because he is coerced to do so. Because he's fearful of the stick being brought down on him. What does that mean spiritually? We're talking about a spiritual service of Hashem. The idea of the spiritual stick being brought down on him, that his godly soul shines. The effect of his godly soul is only in regards to action, that he can only get him to do the correct action. Let's skip over the brackets. We'll go down all the way to 6 lines from the bottom of the paragraph. Eved Ivri and the Hebrew servant who Sha'arotz and Bataynik Shaloyu Be'ikr B'avodas Hashem. That the Hebrew servant is that his will and delight is primarily in Hashem's service, like what we were talking about before. That even though he has bittul, but he chooses to be a servant, and he enjoys the bittul that he has to the other, to the master. By inyanim, because the idea of throwing off the yoke, including the enjoyment that he has in worldly matters, it's by him great pain and suffering. Though when matters of this world arrive at his doorstep, he delights in them. His will is not to be pulled and drawn after them. He is very bitter on the fact that he enjoys in worldly matters. This is the primary level of the Beinim. It's possible for a lower level of Beinim to be an Evet Knani, but the main level of the Beinim is someone that it bothers him that he enjoys worldly matters, and his main enjoyment is from spiritual things. And ultimately, the Hebrew maidservant is a level of a tzaddik. That the midas of a tzaddik were transformed to holiness. He has no battle of the delights, and he doesn't suffer from the delights of this world. The idea of transformation that's beyond sublimation, like explained over there in that Maamar about left. Now we can understand why this is the main topic of our parsha. That's why in Parshas Mishpat it speaks about the acquisition of a Hebrew servant and a Hebrew maidservant. Skip the brackets. The Indian, the Kanani, the idea of the Kanani servant. Skip the parentheses. You could say Avodim shall not go out like the servants leave. In other words, he does not leave his master like a Hebrew servant leaves. Agav is only said in passing. It's not the main thrust of what our parsha is talking about. Skip the parentheses again. The fact that the beginning of Parshas Mishpatim isn't the laws of a servant is of nature of Parshas, because in this Parsha, it's a continuation of giving the Torah just like the first ones are from Sinai, so too these are from Sinai. It speaks about the general idea of the service of Hashem. It has to be an avoid of a servant. But along with being the avoid of a servant, it has to be with enjoyment. The key, which avoid is since the avoid has to be with delight and vitality and energy. Therefore, he speaks about the Hebrew servant and the Hebrew maidservant. And he's going step by step now. First, the parsha talks about a Hebrew servant. The level of the Beini. Because the mid of a Beini is like the Alter Rebbe says in the Tanya. That is the mid of every person, and that's what every person has to strive for. Afterwards, he talks about the Hebrew maidservant, the level of the tzaddik. Even the avoid of the tzaddik has some type of connection to everyone. Let's explain in Tanya. Even if he knows that really deep down, truthfully, he will not attain the level of a tzaddik, he has to do his part because he was made to swear before he came down. The Alter Rebbe right away at the beginning of Perek Aleph says that they make him swear that he'll be a tzaddik. And also, don't be a rasha. So in other words, he also has an obligation to try to be a tzaddik by acting as much as possible like a tzaddik, by trying to make his enjoyment in spiritual things. Yeah, Shlomo, the Rebbe goes on to say, we could say, the reason why the parsha speaks, at least in passing, also about an Eved Kanani, about a non-Jewish servant, because of the iskafia. Because iskafia, sublimating klippa, has an advantage over transforming klippa, which is the level of the tzaddik. Like the Alter Rebbe writes in the above mentioned Maamar about Eved Ivri, Eved Kanani, and so on. Also, it's complete tzaddik has to have the avoid of an Eved Kanani. That an Eved Kanani struggles and doesn't want to do what Hashem wants it to do. Why does the tzaddik have to incorporate the avoid of the Eved Kanani? Because of this quality that there is when a person sublimates the clip. And this is hinted in the famous Maamar Chazal. This is what Chazal say. A person should not say, I cannot eat non-kosher food. No, a person should not say that. Efshi should say, I can eat kosher food. But what can I do? My hands are tied. My Father in heaven decreed that I should not eat non-kosher. Why did the Chazal say that a person has to say that? The tzaddik doesn't want to eat kosher food. Why doesn't he just say, I don't want to eat kosher food? I've graduated, I've transcended the non-kosher food. Why does he say, I can eat non-kosher, but I'm just not eating it because Hashem commanded? The fact that he has to say, I can eat it, so we should have the avodah of sublimating the clip. And now the Rebbe is going to say actually an amazing thing. One might think that he's just doing lip service. He is saying, I can eat the non-kosher, but he doesn't really mean it. The tzaddik, like we said, doesn't have any desire for non-kosher. Comes the Rebbe and says that when he says it, the tzaddik really means it. He actually awakens within himself the desire to eat non-kosher just so he should be able to have a skaf. It's a mind-blowing thing. Let's see you. To know. Iskaf Yezu, who rak hamayla, the biskaf Yezu, harak hamayla the biskaf. And this iskaf, it's only the advantage of sublimating. There is no transforming. By the very statement that I could eat non-kosher and I won't, but he's saying I could eat. That statement makes him very distant from godliness. The fact that he says, and I can eat it, is because Hashem commanded. What's his intention when he says, I can eat non-kosher? And he awakens within himself a desire to actually want to eat the non-kosher. In the footnote in 69, he says that since the Torah commanded him to say Afshi, the Torah is not going to say that a person should lie. Chas v'sholom, the Torah is going to say that the tzaddik should lie. So if the Torah says that the tzaddik should say Afshi, that's because the Torah means that the tzaddik should get to a place, should awaken and inspire himself to want to eat. And why does he inspire him to want to eat non-kosher? So he should have the avodah of sublimating the clipper, that he should go and do something against his will. Peace and moving according to this is understood. The fact that the avodah of tzaddikim is not because they are coerced, but that is their delight. It's also that they are having delight in their sublimating their clipper. Though it's truly a state of iskafia, they're truly sublimating the clipper. The fact that they're saying I can't means that they are awaking their rotzen for it. But they are forcing themselves, they're coercing themselves, and they are going against their will. This itself is their delight. They enjoy going against their will. What was their intention when they inspired themselves to have a will to eat non-kosher? Because they wanted to have the capability of going against their will. So now when they go against their will, so they are fulfilling the entire purpose why they evoke within themselves a desire to eat the non-kosher. So therefore they enjoy this final step of going now against their will and not eating the non-kosher. The Rebbe goes on, last paragraph on this page, it's known Sham Shocha, try the avoid this copy. That's what's being drawn down through the avoid this copy. Yam Shocha, Nilus, Yosem, Ram Shocha, try the avoid this hapcha. We know that this copy, sublimating clipper, draws down a much higher level than the avoid of transforming clipper. Kimaimer, like the Zohar says, brought down all the Basel Gani Maamar. Katzkafi, Sitrachim, and the Sitrach is sublimating. In the glory of the Eibishter becomes revealed in all the worlds, but it says istalik, and the word ascends in all the worlds. That through this kafir comes down the light that's in the way of an exalted state, it's in the way of ascent. Yes, Shloimer, we could say. This Hamshacha that comes about through the tzaddikim is sublimating themselves, that they themselves derive their delight from the sublimating. It's an even higher level that's being brought down than ordinary iskafi. But the idea behind this is that what's the reasons why such a high light, the level of roimus, the exalted light of Hashem, comes down specifically when a person sublimates himself. Through a person bending himself to do against his will and nature. So then the revelations of above is also going against the nature of their level. The godly revelations are going beyond their nature. Even the light that's in the state of being exalted and removed and transcended. because of his nature, it's beyond revelation. Nimshach begilui, it comes down in a way that's revealed. So that is because we're sublimating our nature, so it's causing kaviyachol that the light is going against its nature, that instead of ascending and leaving, it becomes revealed. We could say that when the person sublimates himself in a way of coercion, the opposite of his delight, the fact that it comes down the revealed way, the light that's beyond revelation, that goes against the nature of the light, that doesn't want to be revealed. It's as if, metaphorically speaking, the light is being coerced to come down. This what's being drawn down is called the external will, because the external will is something that I don't truly want on my own. I just want because of something else. When the sublimation of the person is in such a way that this becomes his delight, so then what's coming down is from the innermost will and delight of Hashem.